Coming up on this week's show, the Thunder is closing in on clinching a playoff spot for the 5th straight year. We'll talk about that high-level play from Kevin Durant.
Look at Durant putting on a show and runs. Anything he wants.
And check out a fun day at the zoo with several of the Thunder players.
You come behind the scenes and actually see it done and how well the animals are trained and they listen, and the care that they're in is great.
It's all coming your way starting right now. Welcome to another edition of Thunder Insider. Leslie McCaslin joined as always by Brian Davis and Grant Long. Guys, we are getting close to the playoffs. Wow. Just a month left in the regular season. I know it's so hard to believe, and the Thunder are on the verge of clinching that playoff spot for the 5th straight year. Considering that the Western Conference has been so good this year, and considering how many challenges, injuries this team has been through lately, I mean, how big is this accomplishment, Brian?
You know, if you look at the competitive nature of the Western Conference and the fact that the Thunder is in the upper tier again in the Western Conference, you know, getting home court advantage is a really important thing that many consecutive years, you know, say for that first playoff run against the Lakers. You got that, and then, Grant, you also have the fact that this team is winning the Northwest Division for the 4th consecutive year. I mean, that puts you in the category of teams like San Antonio and Miami. It's just not something that happens year in and year out and not to be taken for granted.
Well, you're exactly right. I think it's an opportunity to point out the method of operation that this team operates under, if you will, and the fact that they go out and approach every game as the most important game, and having that level of consistency. Sometimes when you see a team that is able to be as consistent as they have been over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, you don't necessarily take it for granted, but you only really look at it when they reach certain plateaus. And this is a team, when you have an understanding of what they've been able to do, it's an appreciation for all of their work throughout the year.
Looking at this video of the Denver Nuggets is a real good example how quickly things can change. I mean, a season ago, the Nuggets had the NBA's Coach of the Year, the Executive of the Year. Both those guys are gone, and the Nuggets are out of the playoff pictures. Now, injuries have had a part of that, but the bottom line is that, you know, you need to be skilled. You need to be a little lucky, like keep your health, and I think the Thunder's done a marvelous job of weathering that storm with the injuries. At the same time, this is, again, not something to be taken for granted. Absolutely, Leslie, to be savored. All
right, well, we say that they, you know, have weathered the storm. They know how to do that, and there was a huge example of that last Friday night in Toronto in the double overtime win. That was something special. But these guys are now 9-4 in games decided by 3 points or less, Grant. What is it about this team that when it comes down to those final few minutes, they seem to really put it on?
Tremendous resolve, and I think having an understanding of who they are on the floor, it's not a coincidence that it's going to be Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook who might take the final shot. And when you know that for sure who's going to take that final shot, it gives you a lot of confidence. It gives you the stability that you need to execute in the final 3 minutes of a game. If you need that level of execution, when you understand, hey, if I set a good screen for Kevin Durant, he's going to get open. He's going to do the rest. If I get Russell Westbrook open in an opportunity, he's going to do the rest. When you have the other guys on the floor knowing exactly what's expected of them in those moments, you give your team an excellent chance to win.
At the same time, yeah, you got KD and Westbrook as the usual suspects, but you saw Durant in Toronto giving the ball up to Derek Fisher for a critical three-point shot. The ball didn't go down, but Jeremy Lamb got a good look off of a pass by Durant. There's trust within this team, and it doesn't just have to be those 2 top 5 players. It can be anybody on the floor. And the other thing, too, guys, closing time. I mean, it happens obviously at the offensive end, but usually you hit a shot like that, there's a little time on the clock, you got to go back and defend. And the Thunder, and this goes back to what you said a minute ago, they go about their business the same way, day after day, night after night. And so this team has been through these scenarios now, Leslie, hundreds of times. So now they're just playing. They're not thinking, they're just playing.
So many good things happening for this team. Unfortunately for us and for fans out there, a few more gray hairs, a few less nails, you know, some of that stuff happening in those
speak for yourself.
close games down the stretch. Well, this team is learning how to weather the storm in any situation. Let's find out their thoughts on how they've been able to close out these wins.
With all the factors involved, yes, that was probably the most spectacular game any of us have been involved in. Being down 8 with 49 seconds, and then come back and win that game. I thought that game was so many good moments for all of our guys.
No matter whatever the situation is, down 8, down 7, minute to go, whatever the case, we always have a shot to win, because we can score with the best of them. And, if guys make shot, because they're going to double KD and Russ, we make shots and make them consistently would be fine.
It was a tough, one of the tough road wins that we had this year, and it was a good win for us.
We stayed relentless on the defensive end. Our intensity picked up, our sense of urgency went up, and we just stayed whole and we just chipped away at that thing. And we got a huge win.
Just thought our defense was stepped up a notch, especially on the road. Did a great job of locking in defensively and knowing personnel, knowing who we're playing.
We have to continue to play within our strengths and try to improve and shore up our weaknesses along the way. But I like what we've done this last 7 to 10 days with our practices and our games.
And in these close games, we've seen head coach Scott Brooks go with some different lineups to end the games. Derek Fisher has been in there, Reggie Jackson, Caron Butler, just to name a few. Why is it, Brian, good to start out with so many different lineups, and how will that help him down the stretch?
I think one of the things that Scott has found is a stable core group that can put pressure on the opponent at either end of the floor. You think about Jackson's ability to penetrate. You think about Butler's ability to pop out and hit a three. And both those guys can get down to the other end of the floor and defend. But something else about that, Grant, if you look at the way Scott can mix and match and put, and you've pointed this out during games, Nick Collison in a moment to rebound, Hasheem Thabit to come in and put some pressure on an inbounds pass. He doesn't have to stay with that core group. He's got other guys that can do other things in situations as needed.
Well, two things about Scott Brooks. I like out of timeouts. He is very, very good at executing or getting a play that his team can execute and possibly get a foul or a basket or at least a good shot. They've always been able to execute at a high level coming out of the timeout. Now you talk about the versatility of the guys that are on the floor. I think from my standpoint, it's always good for a coach to be able to throw something at the opponent that now all of a sudden they have to make an adjustment. When you talk about the different lineups that Scott Brooks can put on the floor, it forces the other coach to make an adjustment. And I think if Scott can do that first, now he's got the other coach on a reactionary mode, and that's when you're going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, they have so many different lineups, so many different variations, and when Kendrick Perkins and Thabo Sefolosha return to the lineup, this team is going to have a lot more options come playoff time.
Ahead on Thunder Insider.
Yeah, I got 63 text messages when I got back to my phone after the game.
Time getting deep. KD way outside for three. He's got it! He's got it!